The first cough echoed through the lecture hall like a gunshot. Heads turned, eyes widened. A few students instinctively recoiled. Then another cough followed, and another. Within minutes, the entire hall erupted into a chorus of sneezes, wheezes, and groans. Galen Orville rubbed his temples and exhaled slowly. "Here we go," he muttered. Across from him, Rune, a violet-skinned Yelvian, clutched his throat with both hands. "Is this how it begins? The great extinction event?" Galen sighed. "It's just flu season." Rune's golden eyes bulged. "Just flu season? You speak as though this is routine." "Because it is," Galen said. "Every year people get sick, rest up, and then get better." Professor Velsa, the Eldari lecturer hovering at the podium, adjusted his sleek metallic exosuit. "Students, remain calm. The medical center has been notified." From the back of the room, a green-skinned Zilth student, Vreek, raised a trembling hand. "But this spreads through the air? That means we are all infected." "Not necessarily," Galen said. "Some of us have better immune systems. Some might not even catch it." Rune pointed an accusing finger. "You are unnervingly casual about this." "Because it happens every year," Galen said, standing. "Come on, let's get you to the med bay." Rune hesitated before stumbling to his feet. "I do not wish to perish." "You won't," Galen said, guiding him toward the exit. "You'll feel terrible for a few days, maybe a week, and then you'll be fine." By the time they reached the medical center, chaos had already erupted. Alien students lined the walls, some wrapped in blankets, others curled into miserable heaps. The medical staff, both human and alien, rushed between them, scanning, diagnosing, administering fluids. A harried nurse glanced at Galen. "You sick?" "Not yet," he said. "But my friend here—" Before he could finish, Rune dramatically collapsed onto a cot. "I am fading." The nurse scanned him with a handheld device. "Mild fever, some congestion. You'll be fine." Rune blinked at her. "That is, all? Should I not be placed in stasis?" She shook her head. "No stasis, just fluids, rest, and fever reducers." From a nearby cot, a blue-scaled Tovian groaned. "This is worse than the sandstorms of Vroth." Galen sat beside Ruran. "It's bad, yeah, but you'll get through it." Two human students shuffled in, both sneezing. One of them, a girl with frizzy red hair, waved weakly at Galen. "Hey, looks like we're all going down together." Rune eyed her suspiciously. "You do not appear distressed." She sniffled. "I feel awful, but I'll survive." A sudden shriek cut through the room. Vreek clutched his own arms, eyes darting. "I can feel it attacking my respiratory system." A nurse hurried over, checked his vitals, then patted his shoulder. "You're going to be fine." Vreek's breathing slowed. "You are certain?" 100%. Galen leaned back. "See? Just a flu season." Rune groaned. "I do not like flu season." "Nobody does." Over the next few days, the outbreak spread through the campus like wildfire. Human students took it in stride, stocking up on soup and tissues, dragging themselves to classes with thermoses of tea. The alien students, however, treated it like the end of civilization. "I am drafting my final words," Rune announced on the third day, wrapped in 3 blankets. "Please deliver them to my broodmother." Galen handed him a cup of broth. "Drink this and stop being dramatic." A Zelvani student named Tars clutched Galen's shirt. "You have survived this before. Tell us the secret." "Rest, hydration, medicine, time," Galen said. "That's it." Tars groaned, slumping back onto his cot. "We were not prepared for this." Galen chuckled. "Nobody ever is." By the end of the week, the worst had passed. Students emerged from dorms, groggy but alive. The alien students, though shaken, had gained something new, an understanding. Rune sipped a cup of tea beside Galen. "I have faced death and returned." "You had the flu." Rune nodded solemnly. "Yes, and I survived." Galen grinned. "Welcome to flu season." By the second week, the worst had passed, but the alien students remained wary. Those who had recovered now eyed their human classmates with a mixture of awe and suspicion. The humans, for their part, had returned to normal, albeit slightly snifflier than before. Rune still refused to leave his dorm without a scarf wrapped around his face, despite repeated assurances that he was no longer contagious. "I have seen what lurks in the air," he said, adjusting the fabric like a battle-worn survivor. "I will not be caught unaware again." Galen rolled his eyes. "You're fine now." "I am changed," Ruin insisted. The cafeteria had become a gathering place for post-flu reflection. Alien students huddled together discussing survival strategies as though they had endured a war. Across the room, a group of humans laughed over steaming bowls of soup. Breek approached cautiously, his posture stiff. "You have all recovered so quickly." Galen took a bite of his sandwich. "Yeah, it runs its course." Rune gestured at the humans. "And you are already consuming solid food without hesitation?" "Why wouldn't we?" Breek exhaled sharply. "I attempted a nutrient paste this morning. My stomach rebelled, violently." "You probably overdid it," Galen said. "Gotta ease back into it." Tars, now moving without the sluggishness of fever, sat beside them. "This experience has confirmed my suspicions." "Which are?" "You humans are unnatural." Galen snorted. "Thanks." "I am serious," Tars said, tapping the table. "You barely react to illness, you recover with minimal intervention, and you act as though this is normal." "It is normal." Tars shook his head. "Not for us." Rune leaned forward. "When I first fell ill, I thought my body was shutting down permanently. My species has no equivalent to this, flu. Then what happens when you get sick?" "We do not," Tars said. "Our immune systems are highly regulated by genetic safeguards. If one of us falls ill, it is catastrophic." Galen frowned. "So you don't have minor illnesses?" "No, only devastating ones." Vreek crossed his arms. "Which is why your resilience unsettles us. You treat something that would be a biohazard to us as an inconvenience." Rune nodded. "And you knew it was coming. You even had supplies ready." Galen shrugged. "Because it happens every year?" Tars exhaled. "That is what unsettles me most. You expect this suffering, and yet you continue as though it is merely a seasonal event." "It is a seasonal event." Ruin gestured around them. "Look at us. We have barely begun to process what we endured." A voice cut in from behind them. "First time's always rough." They turned to see an older human, one of the faculty members, setting down his tray. He looked them over with an amused expression. "You lot really weren't ready for it, huh?" Rune straightened. "You speak as though this is a rite of passage." The professor chuckled. "In a way, it is. Flu season gets everyone eventually." Breek narrowed his eyes. "And you have all become accustomed to this?" "Around childhood, yeah," the professor said. "You get sick, you suffer, you get better, builds immunity." Rune looked horrified. "You expose your young to this?" "It's not like we have a choice," Galen said. "It's just part of life." Tars shook his head. "I fail to understand how your species has survived this long." The professor grinned. "Adaptability." Rune sighed, adjusting his scarf. "I will never understand humans." "You're not the first to say that." Weeks passed, and the semester resumed without further outbreaks. But the alien students remained wary whenever they saw a human cough or sneeze, exchanging nervous glances as though bracing for another catastrophe. One evening, as Galen returned from class, he found Rune sitting outside, staring up at the sky. "You all right?" Galen asked, sitting beside him. Rune nodded slowly. "I have been thinking about mortality," Rune admitted, "the fragility of existence, and how humans seem to dance along the edge of it without fear." Galen chuckled. "We don't have much of a choice. Life keeps moving." Rune exhaled. "I envy that. You'll get used to it." Rune gave him a skeptical look. "Will I?" Galen shrugged. "Maybe." Silence stretched between them before Rune finally spoke again. "I still do not like flu season." "Nobody does." But as Galen watched Rune pull his scarf tighter, he couldn't help but grin. Maybe, just maybe, the aliens were starting to understand humans after all. A full month had passed since the outbreak, and life on campus had returned to normal, or so it seemed. The human students had fully recovered and moved on, but the aliens carried a lingering unease. The way humans had endured the illness, suffering through it with little more than mild complaints and heated beverages, had left a mark on them. At first, the aliens had tried to avoid addressing it entirely, as if speaking about the event might invite another wave of misery, but whispers persisted, rumors spread. The flu had settled into the minds of the non-human students as something far greater than a temporary affliction. It had become a specter, a phenomenon that defied their understanding of biological hardship. And then, one day, the inevitable happened. Rune arrived at the student commons carrying a datapad, his eyes flicking over the screen with deep concentration. He sat across from Galen and exhaled through his nose. "It has begun," Rune said. Galen glanced up from his bowl of noodles. "What has—" "The research." Galen twirled his fork in his food. "What research?" Rune placed the datapad on the table. "The university has approved a study on human disease resistance. The faculty wishes to understand the implications of your immune system's adaptability. They suspect there may be wider applications." Galen leaned back. "You mean they want to know if human immune systems can be studied for medical advancements?" "Yes, and many students, myself included, have volunteered to participate in observational studies." "You're volunteering to be studied?" "I need to understand," Ruin said. "I need to know how you endured that ordeal with such casual acceptance." "It wasn't casual," Galen said. "It was just familiar." Rune tapped the datapad. "That distinction is what unsettles us." Over the following weeks, research efforts intensified. Human students were asked to provide blood samples, immune response records, and medical histories. The alien faculty examined patterns, searching for an underlying mechanism that explained the human's ability to tolerate widespread seasonal illness without catastrophic consequences. The real shock came when early results were shared with the volunteer students. Ruin stared at the display in front of him, his fingers tightening around the armrest of his chair. "Your immune system is in a constant state of low-level battle." The researcher, a human immunologist named Dr. Lorne, nodded. "More or less. We're always encountering new pathogens, so our bodies stay on high alert. It's how we build resistance." Rune gestured at the data. "This cannot be healthy." "It's not unhealthy either," Dr. Lorne said. "It's just how we've evolved. Our immune systems are aggressive because they have to be. If they weren't, we wouldn't have survived long enough to develop civilization." Tars, seated nearby, shook his head. "Your biology is reckless." Dr. Lorne chuckled. "Resilient, actually." The aliens in the study struggled to accept the findings. The concept of an immune system that functioned with constant exposure to disease was anathema to their understanding of health. Their own species had developed medical systems that prioritized complete sterilization, genetic safeguards, and environmental controls to eliminate the very possibility of infection. "You live alongside danger," Vik muttered one evening, staring at a human student sipping herbal tea. "You allow it to exist within you." The human student shrugged. "We don't have much of a choice." For the aliens, this realization was as profound as it was unsettling. The humans thrived not by avoiding hardship, but by enduring it. Their immune systems didn't prevent disease, they adapted to it. As the semester progressed, the aliens slowly began to adjust, though their wariness never fully disappeared. Rune in particular developed a peculiar habit. One afternoon, Galen found him standing in the campus marketplace, inspecting every item before touching it. Galen sighed. "You're not going to catch anything from a fruit stand." "You say that," Rune said, "but I have seen too much." "You can't live in fear of germs forever." "I can certainly try." Galen laughed, shaking his head. "You're going to exhaust yourself." Rune straightened. "Perhaps, but at least I will not be caught unprepared again." Despite his apprehension, Rune had changed. The terror that had once gripped him at the thought of sickness had been replaced by something else, an understanding, albeit a reluctant one. Flu season had come and gone, and he had survived. And though he would never embrace human resilience with the same ease, he had, in his own way, adapted. Galen clapped him on the shoulder. "You'll be fine." Rune exhaled. "I suppose we shall see." 3 months had passed since the outbreak. The worst of flu season had faded into memory, but its effects lingered in ways no one had quite expected. The aliens, though mostly recovered, still treated the experience as something between a life-changing ordeal and an unsolved mystery. The humans, on the other hand, had shrugged it off entirely. That divide became most obvious when the university announced the upcoming interspecies survival training exercise. It was meant to foster cooperation between species, testing students on their ability to navigate harsh environments and unexpected challenges. Rune hesitated in front of the list of participants. Galen, standing beside him, tapped the paper. "You should sign up." Rune didn't move. "I have already endured one trial of suffering this year." Galen crossed his arms. "You seriously think a wilderness exercise is worse than the flu?" Rune exhaled, then picked up the pen. "Fine, but if I perish, you will be blamed." 2 weeks later, the shuttle touched down on a remote, rocky moon covered in thick forests and unpredictable weather systems. The exercise would last 5 days, with students divided into mixed species groups. They were given basic supplies, emergency beacons, and a vague set of objectives: find food, secure shelter, and work together to get through whatever the instructors had planned. By the second night, the humans had already fallen into an easy rhythm, setting up fire pits, preparing makeshift bedding, and discussing strategies for the coming days. The aliens, however, were uneasy. Rune crouched beside Galen, watching him stoke the fire. "You are entirely too comfortable in this situation." "Because we know how to handle it," Galen said. "Humans evolved in environments like this." Breek, sitting on a log nearby, wrapped his arms around himself. "This temperature fluctuation is unnatural." Galen tossed another branch onto the fire. "It's just normal weather." Tars, who had been inspecting the food rations, frowned. "Your definition of normal continues to be troubling." They had been provided with nutrient packs, but the humans had already started foraging for additional food. Galen had found edible roots earlier in the day, and one of the other humans, Elisa, had set up a crude fish trap by a nearby river. Rune poked at the ration pack in his hands. "You trust the local plant life not to poison you?" "We did tests," Galen said. "Basic field biology. Most of this stuff is safe." Breek narrowed his eyes. "You mean you consumed it and waited to see if you would suffer consequence?" "Pretty much." Tars exhaled sharply. "You are an absurd species." That night, the first real challenge arrived in the form of a sudden storm. The winds howled through the trees, bringing with them a cold front that sent temperatures plummeting. The alien students, unaccustomed to such rapid shifts, struggled to adjust. Rune huddled closer to the fire. "How are you not freezing?" Galen wrapped his jacket tighter. "We deal with worse on Earth." Elisa, who had been securing their shelter, wiped rain from her face. "You should layer up. Trapping body heat is key." Rune hesitated, then accepted the extra blanket she handed him. "I do not understand how your species is prepared for every form of suffering." "It's not preparation," Galen said, "it's experience." By morning, the storm had passed, but the aliens were visibly drained. The humans, meanwhile, had already begun moving, checking supplies, reinforcing their shelter, and discussing the next steps. Tars sat on a rock, watching them. "Do you ever stop?" "Not if we want to survive," Galen said. The exercise continued, each day bringing new challenges. A sudden food shortage forced them to ration supplies. A malfunctioning beacon led to hours of navigation through dense terrain. At every turn, the humans adapted quickly, while the aliens grappled with the unpredictability of it all. By the 4th day, Rune had started mimicking their behaviors, following Galen's lead when it came to setting traps, securing shelter, and conserving energy. That night, as they sat around the fire, Rune exhaled. "I think I understand now." "Understand what?" Galen asked. Why you were not afraid of the flu, Rune said. Why you endure without hesitation. Your species is built for adaptation. You do not avoid hardship. You expect it. Galen poked at the fire. Pretty much. Vreek, still wrapped in layers of fabric, sighed. I do not know if I will ever be comfortable with that. You don't have to be, Galen said. You just have to keep going. When the exercise ended, the shuttle returned them to campus, exhausted but intact. The aliens, though reluctant, had gained something new. Resilience. Rune adjusted his bag as they stepped off the ship. I am still not signing up for next year's flu season. Galen laughed. Nobody signs up for it, Rune. It just happens. Rune groaned. That is precisely the problem. A month after the survival exercise, Rune sat in the library, staring at a medical textbook on human immunology. The pages were dense with diagrams of antibodies, cellular responses, and charts marking viral resistance. He didn't understand all of it, but one thing was clear. Humans lived in a constant battle with their own environment, and somehow, they thrived. Galen dropped his bag onto the table and sat across from him. Still obsessing? This is not obsession, Rune said, tapping the page. It is preparation. For what? The next flu season. Galen leaned back. It's a year away. Exactly, Rune said, which means I have time to strengthen my immune system. Galen raised an eyebrow. How do you plan on doing that? I have been reviewing human medical strategies, Rune said. Exposure therapy, gradual adaptation to microbial environments, dietary adjustments. Galen cut him off. You're trying to train your immune system. Yeah. Galen shook his head. That's not how it works. Then how do you explain why human children get sick less frequently as they age? Because they've already been exposed to a bunch of stuff, Galen said. But you can't just decide to build immunity like it's a workout routine. Rune crossed his arms. I refuse to be caught unprepared again. Tars approached, setting down a tray with a protein drink and a bowl of something that resembled human oatmeal. He's not alone. Several of us have been researching human immune resilience. Galen looked between them. You're all trying to toughen up for next year? Correct, Tars said. We have compiled dietary modifications based on human nutritional habits. We are also considering controlled microbial exposure. Galen stared at them. You want to expose yourselves to germs on purpose? How else does one adapt? Rune asked. You don't, Galen said. You just get sick when it happens, deal with it, and move on. Breek sat down with a datapad. That is an unacceptable strategy. It's the only strategy we've got, Galen said. Rune frowned. Humans are frustratingly resistant to structured solutions. Because biology isn't a machine, Galen said. You can't just reprogram yourselves to be more like us. We do not wish to be like you, Rune said. We wish to survive like you. Galen sighed. Then you're going to have to stop trying to control everything. Tars exhaled, setting down his spoon. That is not in our nature. Then good luck, Galen said, because flu season doesn't care about your nature. Rune's grip tightened on his datapad. Then we will find another way. 3 weeks later, Galen was walking across campus when he spotted a group of alien students near the biology lab. They were gathered around a small table, examining something under a portable microscope. Curious, he wandered over. What's going on? Rune looked up. We have acquired controlled bacterial cultures. Galen's stomach dropped. Please tell me you're not... We are not infecting ourselves deliberately, Tars said. We are studying microbial interactions. Galen exhaled. That's slightly less insane. Rune pointed to a chart. We are mapping the differences in microbial tolerance between species. Humans have a much higher baseline exposure than we do. Because we live with it, Galen said. We don't sterilize our environments to the extreme. Which may be part of the problem, Vreek said. We have spent generations eliminating unnecessary microbial exposure. It has made us more vulnerable. Galen rubbed his face. So, what's your plan? Rune hesitated. We are still determining that. You want my advice? Galen said. Stop trying to fight nature and just accept that you're going to get sick sometimes. Rune's expression tightened. That is unacceptable. Then you're going to have a bad time. Tars exhaled. We already have. By the time the first signs of illness appeared the following season, something strange happened. The humans, as expected, stocked up on tissues, tea, and fever reducers. They braced themselves for the inevitable wave of sickness. But the aliens did something unexpected. They didn't panic. Rune sat across from Galen in the cafeteria, stirring a steaming cup of broth. His nose was slightly congested, his eyes tired, but he was calm. You're not dying this year? Galen asked. I am still miserable, Rune said, but I am prepared. Galen grinned. Progress. Tars, seated beside him, sipped something herbal. We have accepted that this is a reality of human coexistence. Vreek adjusted his scarf. We do not like it, but we accept it. Galen chuckled. That's the first step. Rune sighed. I still do not understand how you endure this every year. We don't have a choice, Galen said. We just get through it. Rune stared into his broth. Perhaps that is the lesson. Galen nudged him. Took you long enough. Rune groaned. I hate flu season. Nobody likes it, Galen said. But at least this time, you're not drafting your final words. Rune exhaled. I still have them saved. Just in case. Galen laughed. You'll be fine. And this time, Ruani believed it.